Love. A four-letter word that has creeped its way into our everyday lives and has either the ability to completely destroy our world or completely rock it. Hi, I'm Livy Hester, and recently I've discovered that if practiced correctly, love can give you an abundance of blessings. And although the word love has a lot of power to its name, I think that we have more power in using it in the right way and practicing it in the right way that Jesus calls us to practice in that way. I think whenever someone thinks of the word love, they either have two ways they can think about it. There's either a positive reaction or a negative reaction. You either have a lot of regret when it comes to the word love, or you feel so strongly about love and you think it's such a great thing, but no matter how you've encountered it, I think that you have a certain way that you think about it, and everyone's way that they think about it is different. Jesus defines love for us, and so in order for us to properly love and to be loved, we have to remember what he says about it and how he defines it for us. So that brings me to my first point. What is love? A Webster definition of love comes from just saying it's a deep affection or a connection to something or someone. But I think the definition that our world needs to focus a little bit more on is what Jesus says about it. And so what he says in 1 Corinthians 13, 4-5 is that love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy or boast, it's not proud, and all these other things that tie back to love being selfless and intentional. And I think that is what the world needs to start focusing on instead of our own selfish definition, which kind of ties more to what we get out of love, not what we give other people in love. And so when I was growing up, I just kind of saw love and disappointment kind of got bunched together. And so I thought that humanly love was never going to be genuine, it's never going to be consistent. And so the more I believed that, the closer I got to believing that Jesus' love wasn't consistent and wasn't dependable. But he reminds me every single day that his love is the one that's unchanging and the one that's unconditional. No matter what everyone else says, his love is the one that's going to be changing. Or that's not going to be changing. I think all of us are looking for some sort of security and some sort of blanket of hope and some sort of light in this world that has so much comparison and so much hatred towards ourselves and judgment on other people. And I think love is that hope and is that blanket of security over us. And I think that's where a lot of people look for that, is in love. And I think that to love others, you have to love yourself first. And we are called to love others. But he says that we should love our neighbors as we love ourselves. But if you think about that, if you hate yourself, you're never going to be able to love someone. Because if you look at yourself with this self-hatred, and Jesus says, in order to love properly, you have to love someone as you love yourself. Well, if you hate yourself, you can't love someone. And I think that is something that you have to think about and you have to draw into and focus on loving yourself before you can really love others, which is what we are called to do. And I think a lot of people love for a lot of different reasons, and a lot of the wrong reasons in my opinion. But we have to focus on the one reason why he calls us to love, and we love others because he first loved us. And we wouldn't have love unless he loved us first. And you might think that you've never really loved someone, you've never felt loved, you've never had a relationship that could have developed into love or anything, so you're thinking, who's ever gonna love me? And I think all of us need to remember that first, before anything else, Jesus loved you first. And it doesn't matter what all these other people say to you and what all these other people think about you, is that Jesus loved you first. And when he says that we're called to love one another, he doesn't just call specific Christians or specific people to love others. He calls every single one of us to love each other. So I think he did that on purpose because he wanted this world to just be a giant group of people loving each other and being a support system. And so I don't think there's a coincidence in why he said we're all called, because we're all called to love each other, because that is how he intended this world to be and how he intended this world to grow and just support each other. And sometimes I think that the world forgets that, and that's why there's so much turmoil and that's why there's so much disagreement, is because we forget that he calls us to love each other. And I think if we just focus on that and not focus on how much we don't like each other, that this world would be a lot better place. And so I think before you can love others again, you have to love yourself. And in order to do that, you have to cling to what he says about you before you think about what everyone else thinks about you. You have to be so content and so happy in what Jesus says about you before you start clinging to what other people say about you. You have to be so content and so happy in what he says about you that if all those other people went away and all of those other sources of happiness went away, you'd still be okay, because Jesus calls you loved and Jesus calls you forgiven and calls you chosen. So I think that is one of, if not the most important things. And before loving others, you have to love yourself on how Jesus made you and not on how you think the world thinks you should be. Like, love yourself in the way that Jesus made you, and love yourself looking through the eyes of Jesus, not through the eyes of the people who think you should be this completely different person. And you have to believe that you're fearfully, wonderfully made, without flaw. And just clinging to that will give you this sense of security and not be scared of rejection and not be scared of not being loved by someone else. And I think that if you don't find yourself loving yourself first, there's two ways that this love can go. You're either going to hand out all this love aimlessly and not think about what you're doing in hopes that someone is going to return that love to you that you desire and return just this like reassurance that you're worth it. And if you keep handing out this love but you don't love yourself, you're never going to be satisfied. Nothing's ever going to be good enough for you. You're going to keep wondering, okay, what else can I do? What else can people give me? And I just think that you are going to run yourself ragged and you're going to be completely dry because you're never going to feel like anyone's going to be filling you up. Or you could keep the love bottled up inside of you, which is equally as bad as handing it out aimlessly, because like I said, God created love for us to love each other. And if you keep it bottled up inside of you, that's not fair, because he created love in you for it to be handed out in the way that he intended it to do. And so I just think that it's so important to love yourself. And then once you do love the person that Jesus created you to be, you have to return that and share that good news and share that love with other people. That, I think, is so important, and that's what God created this world to be. And I think if we all saw that, life would be so much better. And I'm not going to lie, loving yourself is so hard. It's so hard. But that's why we have the community around us, and that's why we have things like the Bible or things like church and a community like that to lean on and to ask questions on how you can love yourself. And no matter if you felt like you've never been loved or you've never loved, I'm here to tell you that whether you've ever heard those words spoken or you've never spoken those words, like, Jesus calls you loved and he calls you chosen and he calls you forgiven. So because he loved you, that means that you can go out, take that love he gave you, and give it to other people. And when you do that, that's going to change, I think, your entire way of thinking about love. And once you see how that can affect other people and how that can affect yourself, it's going to change the way that you love. It's going to change the way you see yourself. It's going to change the way you see other people. But it's all for the better, and it's all for his kingdom, and that's ultimately the goal, is love for his kingdom. Don't love for yourself. Like, don't love for your selfish actions. Love for his kingdom, not for yourself. But after all of that, if you get nothing out of that, I just want one thing to stick with you. You're worthy of every kind of love, whether it's love from Jesus, love from a human, love from your dog. No matter what it is, you are worthy of every type of love. So, start believing that. Yeah, it's done.